Hi, I'm Loryan Strand, and welcome to another episode of Work From Home Warriors. I am joined with Nicky Hayward-Wright. Hi, Nicky, welcome.
Thanks, Lauren. Welcome, everybody.
Nicky, can you tell me about your role and what is it that allows you to actually, what makes it that working from home is possible for you?
So I started working from my current location, which is in Toowoomba, Queensland, about 3 years ago. The role that I have with the company, which is GS1 Australia, based in Melbourne, is as a digital workplace manager. That role, when I first started 7 years ago, was really in knowledge management, so it's morphed. I was with the company for 5 years before I moved interstate. So what was really good about that is there was a level of trust already there, and the opportunity, because of personal reasons, I needed to move, and the company supported me in that move. So the role, I think it's a combination of already having been established in the organisation and a high level of trust with my direct manager and different people across the business that I work with, and having a role that a lot of it can be done remotely. There are some areas that can't. Just enabled me to be able to transition from a fully face-to-face office-based role into a remote working role.
Okay. And so how far away are you physically? So you said Toowoomba, for people who don't know the geography of Australia. So Toowoomba's in Queensland. You're saying GS1's in Melbourne, which is where I am. So we're 2 states away, but what's the kind of like the physical distance between the two of us?
Oh, okay. So if I say plane distance, might give people an idea. Oh. Luckily, I have an airport on the outskirts of Toowoomba. So Toowoomba is an hour and a half due west of Brisbane. Hopefully everybody has heard of Brisbane. And if I jump on a plane 30 minutes from home, it takes 2 hours. If I drive down to Brisbane, which is an hour and a half to 2 to the airport, it's still 2 hours to Melbourne. So I don't know how many kilometres that is, but yeah, 2 hours in the plane to do work before you get to the airport, and then another hour through from one side of Melbourne to the other where the office is based.
Right. So quite a journey. So how often do you physically see the team?
So I am lucky in the sense that I go down to Melbourne at least once a quarter. Sometimes it's longer. I'm actually about to jump on a plane on Tuesday, and I'll be down there for a week and a half. I usually go down when there's, so we're doing a strategy session next week with the whole of the business information and technology team. So I sit in the ICT area. Other times I'll come down and deliver face-to-face training, but there's a lot of stuff that even in the training sphere, I can do online now. So we're using Teams. I'm encouraging staff to use Teams all the time to do remote connections. So.
Okay. And so what are the other tools that you use to stay connected with your team and the rest of the organisation?
So we are a Microsoft house, so we'll use the different range of Microsoft tools. So outside of Teams, we also have web conferencing facilities. They're used fairly heavily at the moment because we're just rolling out Teams. So between Teams, web conferencing, phone, so I encourage people, pick up the phone if you can't get me. We also have Yammer, so there might be chats within Yammer. What I have been doing is ensuring that when we connect with a video and a video is available, to get people to switch a video on. So there's a change in behaviour for a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely. And so when you do get down to Melbourne versus when you work from home, how do you find the interactions with the team? Is it kind of, much of a muchness? It doesn't make a difference whether you're remote or whether you're at home, or is it richer? Remotely or richer in person?
I think it's actually richer being down there. I think as human beings, having that physical connection enriches your relationship. So at the moment, I don't have direct reports. I work cross-functionally, and when I'm on a project, I'll have a lot of people that I'm working with. So the difference, what I find the main difference is when you're in a building together, people will just drop by and talk to you. So that very casual conversation, that knowledge transfer that happens through the water cooler or up in the tea room or wherever doesn't happen in the same way as when you're remote. So when I go down to Melbourne, what does happen is people will see me. So my diary isn't overly full, like it's reasonably full, but as soon as I arrive and people see me, it's like my diary is just totally full. We're catching up in the corridor. You're reconnecting as well. And I think it strengthens the relationships for when you're not physically there. And I always remind people in the conversations, you know, I'm only a phone call away. It's just as if you have to walk from one floor to another. We've got actually three floors. So sometimes you don't see people from one floor to another. They don't connect physically. It's quite interesting. So I keep reminding them, you know, it's the same as if I'm on level 2 and you're on level 3, you can pick up the phone. I'm there.
Yep.
And when we connect, just put your video on so we can really connect in a slightly different way.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of, given the frequency that you do see the team and the amount that you work from home, how do you handle the isolation of being alone in Toowoomba and working remotely from them?
Yeah, so I think there's two factors there, because I've come from Melbourne, was my last port of living, to Toowoomba, which even though I was born here, funnily enough, didn't have a social circle. So I think that's something that is to really be considered if you're starting as a remote worker from a completely new location to what you normally are, because you don't have the social circle outside to counter that, not having a social circle within that you can connect with from your work environment. So that there is that isolation there. So I have to work very hard connecting to people in the community. Again, you know, if you're already established, you just got to make sure that you're getting out of your home environment, going down to the shops, going and having coffee, catching up with people locally, so you get that social interaction. I've still got really good friends that from Melbourne, and I'll call them outside of work. And when I'm down in Melbourne, I do try and catch up with them as well.
Okay. And I guess, how long have you been doing this? So you're talking about how you've already been at GS1 before, working in the office with them. But so how long would you say you've been a work from home warrior, both within GS1 as well as potentially previous, you know, iterations?
So within GS1 for 3 years. Before that, and even continuing now, so I do some work for universities. And so as an adjunct lecturer and sitting on different boards, so that will be done remotely through distance education. So I've been doing that since 2012. So that's, you know, my supervisor or my markers, and the students are remote. So it's similar, but slightly different. The relationship is slightly different.
Right. Okay. So tell me about your daily routine. From kind of start to finish, and not necessarily all the nitty details, but in terms of like work and the hours that you keep, what does that daily routine look like for you?
So, I mean, my hours are supposed to be 9 to 5 Queensland time. However, when we go into daylight savings, that gets thrown a bit. The staff do forget that you're an hour behind. So even though my hours are 9 to 5, I might start at 8 and I might finish at 6 or 7 based on what workload I have. I think that, you know, and may not have lunch. So I'm my own worst enemy in that. And I think that's one of the things that when you're working from home, you sometimes forget to take breaks. You get so absorbed. You don't necessarily have the distractions of people around you, so you can throw yourself into some activities, unless you've got back-to-back meetings all the time. So my day starts, I'm trying to be quite disciplined as far as not looking at my phone until I'm up and out of bed and had breakfast. I'm trying to change my habits to help me both mentally within how I'm interacting with all this technology, because you do get very tired. So just depending on when my meetings start. So it could be 8 o'clock, it could be 9 o'clock. I am fairly disciplined in the sense that I do start at the time I'm supposed to start, if not before. First thing I do is boot up, so I've got to get through the whole setup and multi-factor authentication, and then get into the network drive, and that can take 5 minutes or more to set up, and the laptop doesn't always work properly, so I've got to undock it and dock it. So the setup routine, I sort of allow 15 minutes to get myself settled, get a coffee, get a big bottle of water. And then the day will be straight into whatever tasks I've have to catch up on, and the meetings. So meetings will happen quite regularly, both meetings that are scheduled and the impromptu ones, so the calls or the quick team meeting or whatever. Try and stop and get up just to go and get a glass of water, or just to make myself get out of the seat, which is what you would do in a normal office. So you've really got to make sure, right, for my well-being, I've got to get up, have a quick walk around. I may well also, I've put a load of washing on first thing in the morning, so I've heard that beep, so I'll pop out and hang it up, and remember that, it might start raining, so I've got to race out and bring it in, and then try and have lunch. Not always good at that. Just depends on, again, I'm finding it at the moment, I'll go to have lunch, but then I get calls because people that aren't in Queensland have finished their lunch, and then they're wanting to catch up. So, yeah, I tend not to go out and do shopping through the day and things like that, unless it's critical. I've got no food in the house. I will. I just tend to try and treat this as my standard work environment. I am lucky the setting that I'm in, so I have a big bushland right behind me, and so if I'm going to have a tea break or my lunch, I tend to go and sit out on the balcony and look at the bush, and that's a nice advantage of being in a location that offers you a good environment.
Yep. Can understand that. Before I was in this room, I was down the other end of the house, and out the window it was actually just the driveway, but the driveway is rocks, but behind that was a nice line of trees. So it was kind of almost like being in the bush. But an interesting point you made about the laundry. There's such a misconception that when you're at home, you're distracted and doing all these other things, but putting the laundry or hanging it out, really only takes a few minutes, and it's a good distraction that a lot of people, who are in an office might just be that would equivalent to them when we'd be going off for a coffee.
Exactly.
What I've actually found is I used to be able to put a load of laundry on and then take it off during the day, but now often I actually have this door shut, so I don't hear the beeping finish, and it won't really be until later in the day when I leave the room and I'm like, oh, that's right, there's laundry to do. And then I'll end up leaving until later.
You have made a good point about going off and doing the laundry, or even taking a 5-minute break and making a personal call. That's what you would normally do in the office environment. Not do the laundry, but you would, as you say, you go and catch up with somebody in the corridor. People might step outside to have a quick walk. They might be doing that with their team. So it's a challenge, and not feeling guilty about doing those things.
Yeah.
And it's important that we give ourselves permission to get up, walk around, have a break. Sometimes you don't do that because you feel people can't see what I'm doing, so I have to work extra hard to show my value.
Yeah. Because
they can't see me working at a desk, and I found that is one of the challenges that I personally struggle with. My boss doesn't, but I do.
Yeah. You feel that kind of obligation that you've got to deliver more. It's kind of like a self-inflicted guilt.
Yeah.
So you talked about like the scenery you've got nearby that you can from where you are, but do you have any music playing during the day, or do you just kind of sit in silence and enjoy the peace and and just have calls from time to time, but largely sit in silence?
I have never really been a person that could study, say, with music on, and so for me to focus and concentrate, I tend not to have music. If I've got music, it's not in my office. It will be at the other end of the house that it's going. So that's just me personally. I tend to work in quiet, but you know, I can have a day full of back-to-back meetings, so I wouldn't have music on anyway. In the office area. So I have set the room that I am in as an office. So I step in here and then it makes me feel right, I am in the office. I tend not to work outside of here when I'm doing work. I will undock my laptop if I need a break and go out and sit on the deck. Depends on what the Wi-Fi is doing out there, whether I can connect really well. So you know, to answer that question, probably more a person that has less noise around me than the music.
And so you mentioned kind of being in the office or you know, occasionally unplugging. Do you ever find that you'll actually work from the bed or from the couch, or is it no, this is my fortress of solitude, I come in and I do my work there?
I tend to find it's easier. I like on a bigger screen. I've got 2 screens set up, and I find it easier having the screens. If I'm just doing email, I might just do them on my phone if it's quick email, and that I might do when I'm having a break or outside. But if I'm doing more complex work, I do tend to be at my desk, which is a laptop with a docking station. And I have a lovely view here. I'm just looking out, so I have a view up the street, and it's all tree lined. So I'm very conscious of setting. When I set this room up, I chose a room that it was going to give me enjoyment being in as well.
Sure. So so you mentioned with your desk how you got the monitors, docking station. What else is set up on your desk to kind of give you that workspace?
So it's quite a large desk, so depth-wise, which is great. So I've got some files so my two screens, a docking station with a laptop, the keyboard, headset, which is a bit problematic, but that's all connected in, mouse, pad, my phone with another set of earphones, water bottle, note, physical pen and paper as well, even though I use OneNote. And that's about it on my desk. I'm actually a very neat person. I do have to my right, which you can't quite see, but I've got wardrobes that I built in, which have shelves in it. And I've got my own books and a few other things. I've got a filing cabinet to my left with a printer, which I don't use that much. I use a scanner probably more, a shredder, a paper bin, some chairs if I've got people coming in, my plants, as you can see over behind me, and that's it. So it's a very a fairly clean environment. But again, that's me. I like it neat and tidy, and I can walk in here and I can close the door if I want to as well. If it's if I want to shut out whatever is at home that may come in and distract me, or want to have a chat and you're on calls.
Yes. So final question. Could you ever envisage yourself going back to being in an office on a semi-regular or even regular basis, kind of like full-time being in an office?
I think it depends on how the office is set up and where it is. One of the advantages, obviously, is I don't have to fight through traffic. That's a huge advantage. Instead of doing an hour each way, I'm 2 minutes, a minute down the corridor. When I go down and I'm interacting with people, I really enjoy it. However, when I'm there, sometimes I feel like, I just need to focus. I just won't want to get distracted. I think a blend would be, I would be quite comfortable with, partly still keeping that interaction with an office. If it's in Australia, if it's global, because I do some global work, so don't get to over there at all. It depends. It really depends. I still enjoy that interaction, but being there full time. But you never know if the situation arises and the right job calls.
Fair enough. So, look, thank you very much for sharing your story and experiences and views. Really appreciate that, and I hope that everybody has found this to be quite useful.
Thank you.